you want to start?
Sure. Eric King, City Manager, Best.
Keith McCoskey, City Manager, Redmond.
Eric Nelson, HLC Vice Chair.
Andrea Blum, City of Sisters. Patty Adair, Deschutes County Commissioner. Megan Perkins, Bend City Councilor. Kat Zucker, Redmond City Councilor.
Daniel Richer, Mayor LaPone.
Colin Tyson, Director.
Okay, sorry.
Eric Roberts, Deschutes County, I'm Deputy County Administrator.
Janice Gerso, Health Services Director. Nikki Doherty, Strategic Initiatives Manager, City of Bend.
William Bailey, Patrol Captain, Deschutes County Sheriff's Office.
Linda Klein, Redmond Coordinator.
Oh, and you're a citizen?
Linda Bend Citizen.
Linda, City Manager, City of Sisters.
Gary Foster, Assistant City Manager, City of Sisters.
Debbie Bainey and his assistant.
Okay, great. Alrighty, let's go to approval of minutes. Has everyone read the minutes?
Let's approve the minutes from our last meeting. I'll second.
Thank you, Megan and Kat. Any other comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, they passed. All right, so now we go to the COI site transition update, please, from Eric and Tammy. And you need to be sitting where you can be seen on camera. Go to computer over there.
It's gonna enter the bubble.
Bubble.
Okay.
Oh,
If we can do
We're
it up close.
all right. Well, just right the camera.
Okay,
Perfect.
okay, so this is my.
I'll try it.
So Tammy Bainey, COIC, thank you so much for having me with you today. And Eric, so we've been working closely on both the memorandum of understandings for the official agreement with Deschutes County, who is the holder of the grant funding, and then also a contract for scope of work to actually fulfill the obligations that are required to meet all of the great things that this board is setting out to achieve. The staffing update that I can provide for right now is that we just yesterday closed the first grouping of applicants, and we have 8 applicants for the housing administrator position. And so we'll be going through that and then setting up interviews. We would like to have someone identified from this board. As you know, we have a holiday around the corner, a couple of them. So also want to find if someone's traveling, that might be a little challenging, but would love to know if there's someone of particular interest that wants to sit on interviewing panels. So
Are you planning on doing it in the next 2 weeks then?
well, it depends on their availability too, because we also don't want to discount someone if they're traveling and understanding
Right.
the grace of the holidays. So it's sort of in flux right now, but if we have someone who's going to be in the area and we can do the interviews, that would really be wonderful.
I'm back in town. I was fine.
Okay, all right. Okay, great. And so with that, Eric, did I make anything up or?
No.
Okay.
The MOU draft has been going back and forth between COIC and the county, having a legal review from both ends. We're very close. There might be 1 or 2 more back and forth. We also mentioned that we would provide a draft of the MOU to the Grove Board just for information. So I expect that to be sent out to the Grove Board in the next couple of weeks. And then we'll take it to Board of County Commissioners, and then Tammy, I'm not sure if you plan to take it to your board.
So I've been keeping them apprised, but I'll be signing that so there isn't a lag agreement. So, and really it's, we agree in all principles, it's the legal language that is being inserted from our councils. So it's really just that part.
Yeah.
The formal transition of Chris's position, which I know is, thank you for your grace in living in that awkward space. The transition of a public employee is a little bit of a different than just hiring. And so we're working through that as well. Our legal counsel has been helping us in terms of CYC's structure is slightly archaic. We've come to learn. So absorbing an employee can sometimes, we're trying to find the right pathway to do that doesn't change our internal structure by bringing someone on. So I won't worry with all the details, but the commitment is there, the communication is there. It's just the details of making that happen.
So you're saying Chris really hasn't transferred yet?
Well, I would say that in structure, yes, we're structure, yes, but
Still a county employee.
yeah.
Right now, and then COIC is reimbursing for the time that.
so the communication and the ability to do what is needed is happening, but it's the formality of where his paycheck comes from and formal oversight is, but the great thing is we have a wonderful relationship. We communicate often, and so it's really just the formality.
So is there anything else in? Are you guys good?
Good.
Okay, all right. Because you were allocated 15 minutes. All right, Tammy, back to you. The
Okay.
group update.
I can talk slower.
Well, that's okay. Talking fast is really just fine.
So I want to set the table by saying that, our community and our region is in crisis. And I want to say thank you to this board for your commitment, wanting to come together and do the hard and really messy work of trying to figure out what the pathway forward looks like. As many of you know, COIC recently, in the last year and a half or so, has stood in the space of supporting the Homeless Leadership Coalition as our continuum of care and helping to provide some extra support to be able to achieve the things that we as a region know that need to happen. And so what I wanted to be able to provide today alongside my partner in time, Chris, and I also want to say thank you to Chris and to Mickey for the dedication and work that goes into a lot of the structuring and organizing of things that are actually happening. I would imagine that if I'm seated in one of your chairs, it might feel like there's not a lot of activity that's going on. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity to bring this forward so that you can see that many of the things that you're hoping to achieve are happening through this leadership here, but also alongside a lot of the momentum that's happening in the region. And so this is primarily, so the work that we do is regional. This is a little bit, we have it narrowed down a bit more toward just the Deschutes County area, but wanted to have this be an opportunity to really celebrate some of the things that are happening and to keep that momentum going, that this is difficult, tedious work. We can all spend time Googling who has it figured out, and there isn't a community that can say that they just have nailed it. But what I can say is that our region and the leadership in this room is making great strides toward being able to support our community members that are really struggling. So with that, Chris, shall we?
Yeah, next slide, please, Stephen. Thank you.
So as you know, we received funding from the governor and the legislature to stand up a multi-agency coordinating the MAC group. That group is sort of what I'm trying to think of, the seats around the table, the membership, thank you, is determined by the governor's office and through the MAC development. And so as we came out of the gate with that, it was sort of like, why wasn't I invited? They are public meetings, but we are required to have certain seats filled. Some of those are maybe a little bit of a head scratcher, maybe some not. Some are sort of missing, and so we've added those as well. But suffice it to say that we received more per capita for the population that we're serving than anywhere else in the state. Part of that is our need, and part of that is our ability to show our commitment. And so pleased to let you know that that was something that typically we don't say that we received more than Multnomah County, but we did. And then to make that even a stronger statement is that when additional funding and some of the partners around the state were not achieving their goals, some of that money was drawn back by the governor's office, redistributed, and we received an additional $850,000. Yes, we still have good relationships with our friends in Multnomah County, but really it's a testament to the work that gets done in this region that if we can show that we can make it happen, then the dollars will continue to show that as well. And so this is restricted funding, so I won't go too deeply into it, but it also is the least restricted funding within those restrictions that we've ever received. And so I would say that the eligibility for some of the funding, if it feels like it's been sort of unorganized and unsure and uncertain, it's because we've really been receiving new information from the governor's office weekly as to how we can spend the funds. Part of that we've actually been able to help guide and say, we in our region don't look the same as another community. That's great that you want us to spend this money on something in this alignment, that we don't need that. We need this over here. And so they've been listening to us and changing some of that eligibility, or at least lessening those restrictions for us to achieve success. Next slide, please. So with that, in specifically to Deschutes County, the dollars have been invested as laid out here. The two goals, well, we have three goals that we are required to achieve with this funding. One of those goals is held by neighbor impact, and that is the prevention goal. And the two goals that are under specifically for the MAC with the funding that is outlined here is for achieving an additional 111 shelter beds and rapidly rehousing 186 households. And all of that is between the time that we received the funding, which really the funding started to flow in late June and early July, to January 10th of 2024. So as you might imagine, this, and we can have a debate about whether that's a good idea or not to set that timeline and ask for these outcomes. The reality is we've received the dollars. Now we're doing our best to achieve success. So these are the investments that have been made. As many of them are doing quite well, some of them are struggling a bit. Part of that is if you're going to remodel something. I'm in the midst of a small remodel. Doing anything within 6 months is difficult. Not having the funding and then meaning to start the construction and then get into some of the actual work and achieve that success in 6 months, it maybe was a hill that's a little difficult to climb, but we're going to get there. So these are the investments that are currently being made, and should we go ahead?
And these are specific to Deschutes County, and so the next slide will show the funding that went to organizations that serve the Tri-County region. But I think the main takeaway here is that the majority of the resources are concentrated in Deschutes County. So there's a lot of providers here that really stepped up to the challenge and have helped us meet the state's goals. So really fortunate to have a bank of providers that we do here in Deschutes County.
So do you have numbers with these? Do we know how many beds they're doing?
Yes, there's a chart that's coming.
It's
a couple
coming.
slides.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for the tee up.
Okay. Then my next question is, remember like a week and a half ago, I talked to you about the fact that apartments in bed
Still.
now are almost, well, they're over 8.5% vacant.
Yes.
And talking to people that live in apartments, there have been apartments in her building that have been vacant for a long time. She pays about $2,000 a month for a 2-bedroom, and I'm just wondering, rehousing, are you going to be able to go into that market? Because that isn't going to take, you know, you don't have to build something or remodel something or put a kitchen in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really
Yeah.
hoping that, because and then hearing on the national news today, apartment costs are actually going down nationally.
So,
Because
Patty, one of the biggest struggles for rehousing and moving people into an apartment complex is the landlord rules and restrictions. They're generally requiring not only a 1-month security deposit, but that you have 3 months of your rental payments in the bank and an income that's going to support that. And they're using that across the state to deny housing vouchers and assistance today. So it's something we're going to have to look at to open up that spectrum.
is the apartment owner required by law to follow that? Well, I mean, what if they've had 10 apartments empty for the last, I mean, it sounded.
It's a free market economy, so I
Right.
would assume if they have 10 empty and they're not in a hurry to fill them with a voucher, they're not hurt financially and they're waiting to see what else they can do. So we're going to have to look at how the voucher program is working, how we're asking our landlords to participate within it, and doing some sort of program to help people meet that gap.
Well, I saw a program in Portland where they gave people free rent for a year, and those people were no more ready to meet the real world and at the end of a year, and then they had to give them another 3 months. But you can't just put somebody in an apartment. You've actually got to help them
But there
reacquaint
again,
themselves.
most landlords have the right to ask for viable income that's going to support that. So you can use your voucher, but you have to show how you're going to support that. And they can use that to deny. So it's a little bit tricky or sticky wicket getting into the public market. So I think it's a great idea. But I think we're going to have to approach people with, would you work with us? It's going to take community involvement.
Well, yeah.
Additionally, with this free market and rapid rehousing, the population that Governor Kotek outlined, who have had an unsheltered situation fairly recently, people often come with those boundaries. So we need in order to utilize some of those units, we would need to look at their barriers and how we can incentivize the landlord to accept, overlook, or screen in those barriers. This population is hard to house, which is one of the reasons that the rehousing goal has been harder for the region to meet, especially even if there are big units.
And many of the EO rehousing providers are doing this exact work you're describing. So,
Yes. I will say that raising that though and knowing any availability in the region is helpful. And so when you brought that to my attention, we put that in the hopper. And so we will be, and probably, I think Katie has already reached out. We are serving a population that has very differing needs. And so there are individuals that might be the right
Well, I
place.
just know some people
Yeah.
in safe
Yeah.
parking that perhaps with the right help move on.
You bet.
They've been helped
Yeah.
and they're, and I know the program in Redmond has been incredibly successful, and then seeing what's happening in Bend.
Yeah.
So, I'm just thinking like, okay, if we can move someone from there that's ready to move on and then move some, into that safe parking.
Absolutely. Yep. And it'll be just as all of us are different, the community members that we're serving are different. And so it will work for some, not for all. And so we won't be able to probably fill all of the available units, but for the ones that makes sense, that's really going to be able to be that step that they need. And so I encourage, if anyone knows of other available units, and I very much appreciate you bringing that to our attention, because that is what it will take. And we do have funding to incentivize those landlords that are willing to work with us too. But some really, it's just not a space where they feel that they can get into. But what you did was perfect, and we are doing the outreach. And
Well, let's not exaggerate, but
no,
anyway,
but really, we are doing the outreach, and
we haven't heard
making
the number
connection.
before, and it's
Yeah.
it's historically high.
it is.
Trending high.
Yes. And so the investments here that also are noted, this is building a continuum that is missing in our region to be able to support the population that we know is in need. And so this investment, for some, they may say, well, we've invested $14 million and we've been able to serve X amount of people. That's a lot of money. We are spending a lot of money today in a non-structured way, supporting people in unsafe environments that are not getting them stabilized to be able to then get into these next places for what their personal success looks like. And so this is hoping to be able to wrap our arms around that a bit more, organize that a bit better, and be able to really build that foundation in our region to be able to support our community. So we do have some funding left. We've created a provider benefit fund, and this is the incentive for all of our service partners that are out providing service and acknowledging and being able to support individuals or households that are currently unsheltered and getting them into shelter. And so we've come up with a way, again, using presenting a case to the governor's office and saying our service providers are really at capacity without a lot of funding to be able to do the things that we're asking them to do. And so how can we provide incentive funding for them to be able to pay for the person who's doing the outreach to connect the individual or the household into the service and help them with those barriers that they personally have? That isn't usually funded. And so we've come up with this set aside. It is slower than we thought in terms of being utilized and drawn down. But at the end, we have a crescendo here of sharing where we are in terms of the numbers that we're trying to achieve in our targets. With this, we also have some gap funding for shelter operations. And so we have a couple of the projects that have reached out and said, we just got a little gap there and these dollars are meant for that. Out of that 14.7 that we, all of the funding that we have so far that's gone out, we have roughly 200,000 that is right now unallocated or unobligated, if you will. And that could go toward furnishings. That could go towards some last minute something or others. We're unsure. Clearly it needs to be structured into these eligibility requirements, but we've really been mindful of how we invest these dollars to help achieve those goals.
And I just want to take a moment to celebrate, typically the continuum of care, right? Central Oregon's Tri-County homeless response system receives about $800,000 that they allocate each year. And so to spend $15 million in one calendar year in the region is, it's a huge accomplishment, and to have done it, in such a way that we're investing in providers and hopefully some solutions that last after January 10th, 2024. It's just really been like a huge community effort, and a lot of folks in this room have spent a lot of this year working on it. So it's really been a group effort and a big success, hopefully. Next slide, please. Thank you.
So these are our goals. And as with anything, you would hope that we're making strides every day. And so the numbers that we're sharing today are now obsolete. So we have some new numbers that we can share. So we have already exceeded our shelter bed number. And for some, I know that I've heard some feedback, well, shelter isn't exactly success. For some, if I'm unsheltered, success is getting me stabilized into a shelter environment, and so that I can be able to then focus in on some other either trauma or whatnot that I might be experiencing. And so we are currently crushing that goal. As you can see, our achievement was to get to 111. And then for rapidly rehousing households or individuals, our number is 186. And again, these are to be achieved by January 10th. The number right now, and Eric probably knows this better than anyone, because Eric is currently helping us with being able to support our partners in mining the data to get it into HMIS so that we know how many. My understanding is that this number could be exceeded by maybe another 20 or so, that we would feel confident. I heard as many as maybe 36, which could bring us down to a number right now where we would need to rapidly rehouse another 28 households or individuals between now and January 10th. So this is the hardest to get to. We don't have a lot of units for this particular population to move people into. And so if it were so simple as just providing the funding to operate them, we would have crushed this before. But this is the hardest piece of the continuum that we are missing in our region. And so I'm really proud of our partner network.
When we're counting for rapid rehousing, are we including shared rooms, like if someone's opening up their house and getting a room as rental? Are we including that for rapid rehousing for individuals?
We would want to capture that. But we would first, the eligibility is that you are at the point of contact, and at the period of eligibility, you are unhoused and sheltered, and then into housing. And so also it needs to have some touch of the executive order funding as well in order to be eligible. But if you are aware of anyone that eligibility sort of makes sense, please let us know. We'll have Eric reach out and refine sort of what the eligibility requirements are.
I just know doctors for shared room, and I would imagine if we had people in the community that open up their homes to people like that, and I know a few that have,
That's great.
it would be something to consider.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so we're tracking permanent housing placements. So as long as they had like a landlord-tenant relationship and it was intended to be permanent housing, I do believe it would count. And then, yeah, to add a little bit of context to what Tammy was sharing, these folks are, this goal is 186 households, not individuals, and they have to come from an unsheltered setting. So this is taking traditionally some of the, hardest to help folks and really putting an emphasis on helping those. And in addition to that, another challenge is that you can't use the funding to buy houses to put people in, right? You can pay rent, but to exactly what you were pointing out earlier, Councilors Wickers, like, we can't require that landlords accept folks, right? I mean, they can't break the law, but we're here offering money and resources, and providers are out there every day working with clients trying to get them housed. But at the end of the day, it's like you can, I don't know, bad metaphor. Yeah, so we're trying really hard. It's also very complicated, and the state's making a bunch of, they have a goal that they're trying to reach, and they're holding us accountable to meeting that specific goal.
So what happens if on January 11th, we do not have 186 people rapidly rehoused? What's next?
We have done our very best.
Okay.
We
There's
are
no-
in close communication with the governor's office. We're in close communication. We are, one of the gaps that we've identified, and Eric can probably speak to this better than I can. Our utilization of the system that is used to capture, to show what our true needs are in the community is not entirely embraced by all of our network of providers. It's not easy either. And with providers, we fund them to be the executive director, to be the grant writer, to be the fiscal person, to do the thing so we're sort of getting what it is that we're paying for right now with the structure of our partners. Just a side note from me, but the homeless management information system is where this information resides. And Eric has been sitting next to those providers and saying, let me look at your data, let's input it. And that hand holding is really helping us get these numbers in, and so that we can see where we truly are.
I have a timely update for you. I pulled the reporting this morning. There's 125 total households in HMIS that are eligible. Of those, 82 have been entered into an executive order project. So there's a shortfall there. However, I've contacted all the providers. They are aware of the identified households, so it's a matter of entering them. I'm leaving this meeting to meet with Mountain View Community Development in Redmond to assist them with their entry. There's an additional 37 households that I think are likely to be counted towards this goal that need some type of documentation of one of the elements. And those providers have all been informed of what's needed there and are diligently working towards getting that documentation so we can enter those households. We're doing the math, then that tells us that we're only 23 households short. There are 300 households that have been identified at Shepherd's House, served in the last year. Maybe some of them, there's some data that we just don't have. And so we're using multiple approaches in order to achieve this goal.
And I would also add for context that I'm not aware of any community in Central or in Oregon that was funded through this that is anywhere like out of line with where we are. Like no community that I am aware of has met their rehousing goal. It's a challenge across the state.
I'd just like to read the text I just got from Rick Russell, because I've been working with Rick for a long time on his safe parking program. We're actively working on rapid rehousing. We have rehoused 17. We have another 5 to 10 families that would be ideal candidates for that converted motel if it gets done in Bend. Have another 50 people in safe parking, working on them now. Biggest obstacle is, as Kat mentioned, finding landlords that will make reasonable accommodation for low credit scores or outstanding debt. So anyway, he still has a lot of people that could go. But what I really like about his message is that once they get to those apartments, we will meet with them twice a month to make sure they can maintain their housing. That's the critical factor. We can't do what Portland did and just put them in an apartment and ignore them for 12 months and then think they're gonna find their way, because they're not.
Well, and that's exactly what the Provider Benefit Fund was created to try to solve. Because what we were hearing from providers is, okay, there's all this money to pay people's rent, but then what, right? Like exactly like what we were talking about earlier. You put someone in a rental unit and then you leave them there by themselves. That's not necessarily a recipe for success for everyone. But we know that different people need different things. And so the Provider Benefit Fund is intended to provide very flexible support. There's a document we created that covers all the different things you're allowed to pay for that the governor's office has okayed with us, as medical care, appointments, counseling, addiction support, all like we cast a very wide umbrella, acknowledging that different people have different needs, but they still have needs that need to be met to be successful.
And that's the important what you have to do.
And now we're working with the governor's office on what this next iteration of funding will be able to be spent on. And part of that is, how do we keep the commitments that we've made now that we're getting people stabilized? And so that ongoing support, outreach, and being able to make sure that people can move through the system in the way that helps them be successful, and success looking different for each household or individual. So I believe that we will achieve this goal. And what I want to also let you know is that the Old Mill Inn and Suites, as you might imagine, some of the projects, Deschutes County's project for parole and probation as well, being able to receive the funds and within 6 months stand all of that up. I mean, we said we can do it, we will do it. Will we maybe be a little behind? Possibly as well. We are achieving this without that. We will have a bump here fairly quickly of what that looks like as well. Both projects are required to have something happening during that time. us achieving this goal helps us in that if we don't have all of our projects completed and we are maybe at 50 for rehousing, we probably have a conversation with the governor's office of needing to provide some funding back. So our ability to achieve this without that is really helping us to be able to retain those funds and continue this investment, because if we are like a snowball right now, we're going to keep moving forward and do our best to try to get ahead of where we're at. And with that, I think that's our presentation. I think it tees you up for your next conversation as well, because with this, we need a variety of options for our community members to get into the right space, to be able to be stabilized, for us to serve them to get to the next space. So we wanted to just let you know that you are part of this success. And if it feels like there's not a lot going on, there is a heck of a lot going on, and your teams have been a part of that. And while it feels like right now we have people struggling, we are being able to achieve some success.
Any stories you want to share? I know I got a nice email back from someone who I met at Safe Parking in Redmond a year and a half ago. And she was so appreciative. She's still having a really hard time, but she's in an apartment. So, you know, I just said, please let me know if you need something, because even when you're on that line and you have a couple of children, and I do know a lot of families in Redmond need some help. They need more help. And seeing what happened with the Bethlehem Inn, and it's really, we spent a lot of money there, $900,000 from the county, from ARPA, and I would really be hopeful that that's going to be back in line shortly.
And I can speak to that if you'd like. Yeah. So in full disclosure, I'm on the Bethlehem Inn board. And so obviously that's a challenging conversation when we bring an asset online and then we don't have the population that meets that criteria to be able to utilize that asset. And what I appreciate about the organization is how do we pivot that to actually fulfill the obligations by the project turnkey requirements, continue the commitment with the community of Redmond of what they said that they would be doing on that property, and then fitting that into the eligibility requirements for the governor's office. And so we were able to get agreement that we can do some permanent, or it would be rapid rehousing, I have to use my terminology correctly, rapid rehousing, and with some structure around substance use and being able to be sober living. And so 6 months ago, that would not have been eligible. As of last week, that is now eligible. And so we are working with, and it all comes down to making the case. And so Bethlehem Inn is working on refining a project that uses that asset for longer term housing that will fill a need in the Redmond community, aligning again with their mission, project turnkey, and with the community of Redmond. So that's where that's at. We hope to have that online yesterday. So
when's it really going to be online? And it was county funds that put it into that project, because at that point in time, the Redmond wasn't going to.
And so you will not lose that investment. It's actually going to fill a need that at the time was not identified, but now it is. So what I think is great is we're not trying to fit into what we funded. We're fitting in what we need. And it's going to give longer term stability for the people at that property.
Substance use disorder is what you said.
So it will be along the lines, I don't have the documents in front of me, but they are allowed to require sober living.
Okay. And are they allowed to live there for 6 months, 12 months?
They are allowed to, if they have a tenant agreement, so they are allowed to live there as their housing.
And Councilor Commissioner Dare, if I may. So earlier we were talking about, right, it's this like pipeline that we're trying to build, right? Folks stabilize maybe in a shelter or in safe parking. And then once they stabilize, there's an opportunity for them to kind of level up and move out of that setting. And so I think this is an opportunity to, like right now, the Redmond community doesn't have a whole lot of vacant units for folks to move into. And so what like I've heard is a time limited program is how BI was running. Folks would go through the program, they graduate, they wouldn't have anywhere to graduate to. So they would go back to either an unsheltered setting or they would go stay at Shepherd's house. And then once they were re-eligible to go back into the BI program, they would do that. And so rather than having people cycle through that, the BI, I think, is taking this opportunity to say, okay, what's missing in that pipeline, and let's fill that gap. And those are units for homeless, formerly homeless folks to move into, right? And so now it'll be, hopefully, maybe folks stay at Shepherd's house, they stabilize or wherever, safe parking. And now here's this bank of units that are available for folks to move into that maybe have some rules, but also have increased supports as well, I think.
So what's the vacancy at the regular Bethlehem in the, do we know?
I don't know if there is vacancy.
Okay.
I don't.
I know there was always,
As of Monday, there was.
okay, I know there was in the red.
Yes. And they were struggling with the low numbers of individuals that were eligible to be at that property and the staffing required to continue that program. And so this is really a great example of a community partner pivoting to meet the need differently. And so the asset is, and that commitment is there. And so we should know more very soon.
Thank you.
There, we can actually share some stories on Franklin Shelter, which is one of our cities too.
Oh, do you want to?
Amy, do you want to?
Well, I did just want to share that we got.
Oh, Amy, do you want to come to the table? Thank you.
Oh, please. It's like buzzing bees over there at Franklin. It's great.
So Franklin Avenue Shelter was funded through PO and through COIC, for which we are very grateful. And as of November, just in the month of November, there was 61 unduplicated clients, 14 families with minor children, 22 unduplicated minor children that were housed, through the month, I should put my glasses on, and then 22 medically vulnerable individuals were also housed in this program. So it is working. It's at full occupancy. We have 60 beds there, so we're actually a little over. So the dollars are working in the community and providing shelter.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Of course. My corner.
Okay, yes, back to the corner.
So we do all of this work in partnership with the Homeless Leadership Coalition and with the MAC and with all the partners and many in this room. So just I want to give you that sense of it is happening and we're making strides.
Great. So does anyone else have any comments? We're good? Okay.
You on the hot seat?
Sure.
I can pull up next to you.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, you can close the tooth cat bubble.
No.
And there's a series of attachments for this next agenda item. Which one is the best one to pull up first?
I would pull up the PowerPoint, which is after
Okay.
the documents. And the first page looks like this blue page.
Three. As they say, we're going to start with the end in mind. Where are we headed?
Hey, not sure if it's officially afternoon or morning.
Morning.
Still morning.
39.
39.
So good morning. Again, I'm Janice Garceau. I'm Director of Health Services. Here today, mostly in the role of having been a member of the Public Partners Roundtable group that's been meeting for some time, to talk specifically about projects to provide emergency shelter for unsheltered homeless individuals in the community. Lots of folks in that group are here in the room. So we have had membership of folks that work for the cities, for the counties, some of our facilities people, properties people, law enforcement, our public partners or our public lands partners have all been part of this group. So it's been a large group. They've met pretty regularly. So We're going to cover, we're really going to tee up some decision points for our Crow board members today. So the goal today is to refresh you on the work of I'm going to call it the PPR because Public Partners Roundtable is just a mouthful, and then ask for your direction and guidance and agreement on next steps. We have some recommendations, but also some decisions for the group. Can you go to the next slide? We felt it was important as a group to be clear about what we were doing to try to help this body make decisions. So we did develop a goal statement, and that goal is that we support the work of the Crow through technical assistance, best practice guidance, shared resources, and practical problem solving, with the overarching goal of growing a continuum of geographically diverse living spaces for unsheltered people in Central Oregon. And our specific target outcome is to address the shelter needs of 30% of Central Oregon's unsheltered, unhoused persons. So you might ask, how did we arrive at 30%? We were not completely arbitrary. So we looked at a number of elements in the data. One is that Oregon currently is in the top third in the nation for the percent of individuals in our state who are unsheltered or unsheltered, unhoused, and we're first in the nation for unsheltered. We also know that houselessness increased in Central Oregon by 28% in 2023, and that unsheltered houselessness increased by 17%. These numbers are based on the point in time. 73% of over 1,000 unhoused persons in Central Oregon are unsheltered, which is a large number. And of those, at least 46% have at least one disabling condition, and 45% of those have lived in Central Oregon for over 20 years. So there's been a lot of community discussion about who is our unhoused population. And we agreed for the purposes of this group, we really wanted to focus on those folks who are unhoused and are our community members. They've been part of our community, our families, and our neighborhoods for over 20 years. So that's how we arrived at 30%. 45% was probably not realistic. 30% seemed like a possible doable number. Next slide. So just a reminder, you as a group adopted these values and added some really important elements to it in the form of maintaining public trust and developing good neighbor agreements. But that really is sort of encapsulating the larger values and criteria that the group committed to, this group committed to, I think over a couple of months ago. So we really appreciated that commitment. I think it helped us guide our work and direct our efforts. I'm not going to belabor those because you've seen them, reviewed them, approved them, and they're great. We developed a packet of materials for you. We've visited with you individually about that packet. You have them in your materials. So what you have today is a brief document, but an important one that gives you technical assistance and advice around how to technically assess a site. We had a lot of help from Amy Fraley on developing that, so thank you, Amy. She's got lots of experience citing resources, and it was incredibly helpful. We also provided you with some guidance around strategies to engage the community, because one of the most critical things about doing this work is bringing our community members along. And that means both people with lived experience of being unhoused and people who are going to be their neighbors when we cite a shelter option in. And one of the commitments that this group made that is incredibly important that we really appreciated is to bring the community along every step of the way. So the community engagement strategies are based on learned, lived experience in the city of Redmond and the city of Bend at engaging the community when citing shelter. And there's some great advice in there based on successful projects. We also provided a framework, a kind of menu, actually, of options for how to address unsheltered individuals. So that talks about things like safe parking, managed camps that are low barrier, managed camps that are higher barrier, all the way to what some people call pallet structures, although I think that's not the term we're supposed to use anymore. So a better term. But it gives you a general sense, and it will give the community who may be responding to opportunities to provide these services a way to understand what's involved in standing up those kinds of shelter options. So that's available to you as well. So today, we are asking for your guidance and your wisdom around a couple of things. One is we would love for you to adopt the package formally as a resource for the community. I think it will inform the next decisions that are ahead of you. One is to make a commitment to a regional approach and make a decision today about what that means. Does that mean, A, that the Pro Board is agreeing to do two things: combine available resources and then fund and design an RFP as the funding entity for requests for proposals from community providers for standing up shelter for unsheltered houseless people? Or are you agreeing today to combine your wisdom, help design the RFP, and then perhaps invite the entities at the table to use the package of guidance materials and the identified resources to agree to RFP independently for some options in the community? So that's a little bit complicated, and I'm going to pause there and let people think on that.
You just said regional approach.
Yep.
We are actually Deschutes County's board. We are not Brooke or Jefferson.
Okay.
And so by using the term, we don't have representation from either one of those counties. And I don't really think that some of the commissioners that I know from there really wouldn't want to be here. If we want to build it, we can build
And
it.
I think, I was gonna say, I think that really trying to tee up with the framework that we all signed in Redmond and Deschutes County. So I agree. Yes, when we say regional, it's not.
It's gotta be.
It's a smaller.
It's county.
Smaller.
It's county region.
Deschutes
Yeah.
County.
Maybe we say county.
Yes, okay, thank you for that. It's not 4123 nor what we're doing sitting here.
Other thoughts or questions?
So at this juncture, when we're talking about the funding mechanism, and I think that's the elephant in the room, is
Yes.
whether we all want to pool our funds and then have them go here or there and maybe not immediately in our backyard. I think the wisdom of the group is the best starting point. And as we pull these projects out of the table, we can decide what that funding looks like. The map was a perfect example of how funds were, I think, equitably distributed based on available need and the ability of the providers to work with what was available. I think the RFP process itself, when we flush that out and we see where people are willing to work and have things, will also flush out how the funding goes, and it will actually take governance support of the localities that they're in as well. In the city of Redmond, I'm sure they don't want me speaking for them.
Right. Agreed. I think what has happened with the MAC group is a really excellent model that we can use to do this regional Deschutes County RFP through the coordinated office. And then, you know, in the next step of the process, when there are sites identified and they are in specific areas, then it makes total sense in my mind for that to shift over to those individual cities or the county. I guess one of the questions that I would ask while we're sitting here is, this is these sites, this conversation, the framework is Bend, Redmond, in Deschutes County. And to our two members of the court, yeah, there's a Lapine, I'm just curious about how you are feeling about this, what input, how you would like to have as we go forward in this process, because this is very centered on those two cities in the county. Just wanted to
Right.
I wanted to make sure you had time to.
Yeah, sorry. I feel that the funding needs to go to where the need is the greatest, you know. It just makes sense that way when the need becomes greater in outlying areas, then we can focus on that. But right now, we need to focus on where the problem is the most, adverse to the.
Andrew, did you?
I agree with that as well. When preparing for this meeting, I was trying to think about whether there was a purpose in bringing things back before the entire board, or rather to empower each community to kind of work through their projects on their own. I think that almost delays action. If there was some purpose in having the stamp of the full board, some political purpose, some funding purpose, some, endorsement that was important.
Meeting the goals that the governor has set.
Yeah, I mean, if there was some purpose in doing that would be of advantage, then sure, let's involve the whole board and take that step. But if there isn't, I just see it as a time-consuming additional step, because I would be totally looking at, well, what do you think, Kat? This is in your region. What do you want? What do you need? So I see no reason to bring it back to the full board unless there is some sort of a step that
Going
needs
back
to be taken.
to our strategic plan and the executive order, we do have steps that we need to take to be in compliance. And I think that's really what we're looking at.
Right. So I mean,
If you want to flush me out a little bit on that.
Yeah, no, and our thinking was, so since the governor visited over the summer, right, is, Commissioner was kind of alluding to, right, the governor's office, Redmond and Bend County, we're working to kind of how do you get it? Those are 4 partners, right? How do you get 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 5 instead of 4? And so that's why I think coming back to running it through the CHRO board is going to open more opportunities for money, particularly at the state level, than if it went back to the individual pieces. There are going to be things we'll have to navigate, obviously, whether it's community input or whatever it might be, but centering on the collaboration will yield better, I think, financial results.
Well, it's the whole reason why we're here.
Right.
I mean, the whole reason, why 4123 happened and why we're in this room, is to have this regional approach. So, I think that's really the most important thing.
Well, and if I can just add a couple of thoughts. I do agree that doing the mechanics of an RFP is probably something that's best done locally, but there's an enormous amount that you can do as a board with your combined strategic plan and your vision values to support those RFPs. So as you know, these are not easy projects to stand up in communities, and having this board less a package of resources that people can use as they're working through those RFPs, provide some guidance to what the gaps in the community are that need to be met, give the go-ahead to your individual staff who are going to do the heavy lifting to pull off some of these projects. All of those things are incredibly valuable. The other thing that we, in terms of the work group, would be inviting is your willingness to make some decisions together about some communication points, some talking points, some engagement strategies with the community that are more broad around things like how to safely locate shelter options in your communities, how to fully understand the phenomenon of houselessness in our community and not just the worst case scenarios. There's a lot that can be done that helps those entities that are going to be doing the RFPs and trying to stand up offerings actually get something accomplished. And so I think what we tried to bring you is you can decide to do this together as a group. You can decide to free entities to go do their work quickly, which is great. I agree that may be the more strategic way to do this. And you can lead in some of the more centralizing county-wide ways that will help us actually achieve the goals. And there's lots of material here that, with your blessing, helps us do that work.
May I ask our 2 ex officio members? I mean, I think you're serving today as an ex officio member of there. But Molly, I'd love to hear from both of you. Like, what do you think of this approach? I mean, I've had a chance to see this.
Can I add one more piece of
Yes.
information that might impact what Molly and Eric?
Mhm.
Sorry, Eric. One of the things that we would ask permission to do is go ahead and help be in a roundtable with the partners that provide these services. So we would want, if there is an RFP in design, we would want to bring the people who know this population the best, who understand how to stand up these kinds of offerings in the community together, to talk with us and with you about what this looks like. And they could potentially have access to the list of sites and say, look, we're very interested in taking a look at this site. We're very interested in journalizing it with you. We have an idea for how we might use that site well, and we can do that in partnership with them. So I didn't want to leave that out before you got a chance to just weigh in. Sorry.
And that's the second bullet point down
Yeah,
on the far right. That's the imperative piece. I think one of the things that we have to consider and recognize in this TA package is we've got a lot of things that we've stood up with the EO money very quickly. We've got a lot of providers that are very tapped. We have, as neighbor impacts, 17 subrecipients that are span from street outreach to shelter providers, whether it be one or emergency. Those are across Massachusetts, Jefferson counties, and tribes of Warm Springs. So I think that it's just that coordination and integration, and also helping folks build capacity. There's a lot of expertise in our region. There's a lot of providers that are really doing it well. I think that
Molly, what's your favorite provider? I mean, what do you do? You know, we've been doing this since 2011 in Central Oregon, this group. And, you know, I know people in our community want results. I know people are leaving this town because they are sick of what they see every day. And I hear from people and I can understand. So what is it we can do now that we know we're actually we've taken a whole year now. Seems like this has just gone on and we've done all this talking. How many people have we really helped? Have the numbers really improved from last year? Have they honestly improved? You guys would know.
the numbers have actually improved because what the investment has been over the last probably 18 to 24 months is not just one singular option, which is what we've had. I started this work in 2011 as well. And when we had BI and Saving Grace, and that's what we had. They were high barrier or very situational specific. Now we have a multitude of options. And so I can't identify a favorite child.
Well, I know that was a terrible question. But I had to ask it because I know there's frustration. Yeah. We want to know we're spending millions and millions of dollars. What is it? The state has spent over $1 billion on the homeless. And what is our numbers for the state have gone up like 22%.
And I think a part of that is that we've also shifted the way that we're counting and interacting with folks too. So some of these people have been around and part of our population for a very long time. We haven't captured them in data. We haven't had interactions with them, but because we have a great core team of street outreach folks that are really connected to this population, really raising the hand and the voice of those folks, and all of these different options that we have now available to people, because we know that folks that have experienced an unhoused situation for a very long time can't go from a camp situation in the forest where they're completely outside of sisters and into an apartment. Here's your key, thanks, have a great life. That's not going to work. And so we've learned so many lessons. Sometimes it takes dollars to learn lessons, but I think that moving forward with this package, the RFP, I think you're going to want to really be sure you understand what each entity by that convening, what they have an expertise in, what they have a passion for, because if they don't have a passion for this hard work, then they're not going to be able to build capacity and move forward. So I think I got lost. I lost the original question.
Your favorite
That's
child.
your favorite child. Son would probably not appreciate a reply.
Oh, my son always tells me he's my favorite child. My one son. So I do love
I
it.
just choose my grandchildren.
Well, no, I mean, it's like the Veterans Village. We don't seem to discuss that, but that Veterans Village started 2 years ago. Those were homeless veterans, PTSD issues. They moved from homelessness into the village, and 19 of them have moved on with 2 years of surround sound services. So I see that as incredibly successful. I think that's, we are losing so many veterans on a daily basis from suicide. So I'm so proud of their work. it just seems like we should have more programs that we can really look to and say, yes, that's really making a difference in moving on, because you can say that about Kobo's, support of that group.
And my response to that is that we have those same successes that are happening, but when Tammy outlined that we've got a two-person entity that is executive director, grant writer, data administrator, service provider, street outreach, physical, direct client services, they don't have time to tell that story. I think that the shepherding and the focus on the veteran population is amazing and very important, but I think those I'm seeing those successes happening in other places. You safe parking is one, reach safe parking, street outreach, camp outreach, to safe parking, to shelter, to rapid rehousing. That is all happening. We're just not telling our story.
Well, the numbers would be, if the numbers were accessible, I think that would really help the community. Honestly, you've got to look at the numbers. We're looking at millions being
I
spent.
think we just looked at the numbers.
Yes, they are
at the beginning of this
accessible.
presentation.
Right.
They are accessible numbers. So those numbers have been
So we're
stated
tightening
for
numbers.
what we're doing. And I think that what we're hearing is that while we have good numbers and we're trying to move forward, there are numbers we're missing. And that's what I believe Eric's been working on, is meeting with our smaller providers who don't have as much access and time to the data system to help them get their data in so we can be more spot on. The one thing I know we have successfully done in the last probably 24 months is increase the ability to collect our data. And it's been a real hard push throughout all our service providers.
And I think it goes back to the TA package on the left, the bottom element, the key communication points. It needs to include that storytelling and those successes. And Patty, do you know if those veterans that have moved on have been counted towards the rehousing goal?
Some of them, yes.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
some of them did not come from unsheltered situations. So that would be the first thing I'd say. I'll speak to a couple of the comments first. Probably the first one, what are we spending all of our money on? What are the results? The best way for us to quantify that is going to be next year, because everything, even today, you saw the numbers that we looked at today have changed, right? So there's not really much value in us continuing to report daily or weekly on progress until we have a more complete picture. We have providers that are doing data cleanup, and that is a big factor in what does the data picture look like. So when the window closes on January 10th, we'll be doing data cleanup for, let's say, 45 to 60 days. And then we'll probably be doing some type of data presentation. I'm guessing the state will want that.
I would think so.
That says, of your 186 households, for example, how many of them are families? How many of them are single adults? How many of them are chronically homeless, et cetera? And we're going to work to provide that data. The data picture we have today is better than it has ever been. And that's largely due in part to Neighbor Impact's efforts as the HMIS lead agency.
So thank you for saying that.
I think investment in technical assistance for providers in reporting and gathering data is going to be critical in every stage as you progress your efforts in the DHRO. And then I'm going to go down the technical assistance package here. Community engagement strategies. The HLC has a community engagement committee. One of its members is sitting there in the corner. Thank you for being here, Chuck. The site evaluation template, shelter committee and the street outreach committees, they are comprised of the providers who provide those services in the community. I would ask them for their 2 cents, as it were, when we're looking at these types of things. What does an outdoor shelter framework look like? Once again, I would look to those providers to assist with that. Key communication points, I defer to Molly's expertise. She summarized that quite well.
So Eric, just so you know, Eliza is on the PPR work group and informed all of those products. So you're definitely speaking with the community of service providers through Eliza.
Oh,
And she texted me this morning because she couldn't be here to say that I'm mostly summarizing what she said, right? And then if we're looking at identifying resources, I'm in the center now, combined or complementary funding, that's where the HLC is going to take a position of how do we distinguish those things. This is a Deschutes County centric body, and the HLC is not. So that is a larger discussion that the HLC is going to probably end up having internally to give you the best kind of advice about how the HLC can contribute to your approach.
I do have a question. What are the point in time count dates for January?
January 23rd.
That is just on one day. And how many people will be taking the count then on that one day?
So, Commissioner there, so it'll be a week-long endeavor, but folks will be asked where they slept the night of January 23rd. So the
Okay, where they
count
slept.
starts then, it goes through the end of January. I don't know exactly how many people are going to be conducting the count this year, but
A lot.
a lot.
A
Yeah,
lot. The third planning meeting was.
yeah, well attended. Yeah, over 20.
Over 20 people then?
Yeah, well,
And so
Um,
the shift is from the volunteerism, and then COVID took that away. And so we started using service providers that were already doing the work and already engaging. And that's one of the reasons primarily that we have seen that increase in the point in time count. Not that we don't have a growth in homelessness and unsheltered homelessness, but we do have better engagement by trusted entities in that count. So the 20 people are service providers, not it's not
20
the-
service providers then,
it's
or
not
20 people
20
from service?
people from service providers.
Okay.
So it's not the same media hype, engaged, hoorah, press release type event, because what that does is that scares our
Scares.
population underground, and we don't get them counted. So this shift has created a kind of an erroneous small increase in unsheltered counts.
And that was something we discussed even last year, on this board, is that when we improved our methodology for quite time, we would see an increase in our homeless because the methodology had improved to capture people that had been homeless and not had before.
And I think we have a good baseline in 23, and so looking at our growth from here, especially, I think the summary to your question, Commissioner Adair, is that these millions of dollars have been spent on expanding options to acknowledge each Central Oregonian's homeless situation, circumstances, and independent solution.
So circling, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I think just as important as a point in time count is something like a point in success count to present to the community to show that actually, we are, making forward progress in this, rather than just the community sees how many dollars we spend and we see how much our homeless population is growing by our point in time count. But I think that we should toot our own successes at some point, each individual provider somehow to say we're gaining ground,
Absolutely. This last bullet or bubble or whatever, where it says launch broad community education and engagement strategy. One of the things that we were talking about during our one-on-one, and would love to see the Crow board really be a part of is a road show talking about in each of these communities, talking about what is the state of homelessness in that individual community. What's happening on the ground? Where are the gaps? What have the investments been? And really also have it be a time when local service providers and people who are working for the city and doing this work can talk about those successes and really paint that picture and allow the public to come in and be a part of that. In addition, really breaking down what is low barrier, no barrier, high barrier, what do all these things mean? So I think that's something that I would really hope that we approve and when we talk about sort of our next steps, because I think that is so important.
I think it's very vital to community adjustment.
Yes.
Sorry, can I just say something on behalf of service providers? This is why this point, thank you so much, Vice Chair, for bringing that up. This is why this point was here. We are out there doing the work. Right now I have a team of 9 people covering the entire county, like 1,000 people. They are not public information officers. They enter data in a chart when they do their work. They are not going to be able to do the kind of PR that needs to be done around this population. So when you ask for data, they do their best to scramble and provide that data, but we really rely on you as leaders to speak about those successes when we give you the information. One example is today you got some really excellent numbers from the work of the MAC group, which has been unbelievable to have that much done in such a short period of time. The more you can be talking about that publicly, the more it helps people manage the frustration. Homelessness has been growing in our community for years. Housing prices have been growing dramatically in our community for years. I don't know that we're going to work our way out of the situation as quickly as people who are living next door to really trying situations with life. That is a hard reality. And I know that you all have to sit on the front lines and hear the concerns of the community.
No, I drive down 97 and I
Yes.
see what's happening. They're filling in again.
I drive down the same road.
Right.
Yeah.
And they
I
right
hear
by,
you.
yeah, right there by the sheriff's office, they've got their tents again, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, isn't there a safer place for them
Yes.
to be? Because sure enough, somebody was run over right by Bethlehem in like a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, so you see it
So
building
help
again.
us tell the story of what is working.
Right.
Because that helps us build hope in the community. And that helps the community join us in solving this problem together. That's what we're asking.
And no data is ever going to be perfect.
No.
When you are dealing with human beings. These are not inventory of a product on a shelf. These are human beings.
Yes. And they're mobile and they.
Absolutely.
Everybody has got a short crisis from everything. So I think what Janice was asking us, and I know there's a lot more to go through here. Is,
Yeah, do you have
have a
more to go
feeling.
through, or
I don't. I really am waiting now on your good decisions.
She's looking for an approval of this
values, criteria, key decisions?
as our package moving forward. And I have no problem with it as stated.
Does anybody else have any comments?
I would just add that missing on this is that you have a number of state and federal agencies that are waiting in the wings
Yes.
to also be supported.
Yes.
And so while this is your decision to be able to let us know what direction you want us to go, they are ready to provide their own, in particular, PIO support, other operations support, being able to, knowing that maybe their properties are not the ones in which some of these investments might be made on, but they're ready to stand next to you to be supportive in the manner which makes the most sense. So that's not maybe captured here, but that's all part of this process too.
Andrea, did you have anything else?
I was just wondering, your state, like who?
So seated at the public
Partners.
thank you. So we have ODOT, we have the Forest Service, we have, so state agencies that are, or federal agencies that are also impacted by this.
And you have a sense from federal agencies that they have the flexibility and the higher up approval to actually participate in some of this?
I just actually had coffee with Holly Jukes the other day, and in fact, in July of 2019, when she first got on board, I talked to her about China Hat and what a problem it was. And our coffee the other day, she said, oh, it really wasn't a problem in 19. And I go, but I was listening to people in 18, and we've seen what just happened, last week in China Hat. Somebody died, somebody else was stealing, it's really scary, some of the situations down there, and anybody that needs help and wants safety needs to get out of China Hat. I would say that for the record. And Holly seemed to think that she could hire a liaison to our group and, working with enforcement and bringing more enforcement in after the first of the year.
So they are utilizing resources today. And so what you have is a commitment of pulling resources, not writing a check and saying, you now oversee my person or here's the funding, but aligning our efforts in a manner that actually help us to achieve what it is that we're trying to achieve. And so, yes, we do have those commitments.
I think that's a really essential part of this process because as we all know, anyone who has tried to have any form of outdoor shelter in their community, these things take a lot of time, and we really need to be focusing on as well, while this is all happening, on the immediate emergency that we are having, particularly in our forests. And in other areas of our county, and what we can be doing now, how we can share resources and supports, and provide basic needs and also safety for those living in and out of those situations. So I think that's, it's not maybe not on this exact, document here that we're all looking at, but I think it's a really important part that I don't want us all to lose sight of, because I think we are all feeling that urgency and are all very worried about a lot of people in our community, that are in these real dire situations right now.
And I think both sides of our communities, the people
Absolutely.
in our forest, the people
Absolutely.
living by it, they're still part of our community, and it just because there's an invisible dotted line that says that's not county land or
Yes.
that's not city,
Yes.
it doesn't mean that it's not impacting our
Yes.
community. So we do need to make a structured and thoughtful approach to working with Forest Service to
And we have
And with
some
those
technical
on-
models that are not, they're not ideal, they're problematic. We don't know how long we can sustain it, but we have done some things that have. I would say that the situation in Juniper is better than we have right now, partly because there's some presence there. Absolutely. So, that feels like it's a hard forward step. It's probably not totally committed.
Not totally, perhaps not at all.
Perhaps not at all, but I'm telling you that having bodies there, treating people with dignity and respect, having some people patrolling the area on occasion has changed what it feels like to be there. That's a model.
One, and understanding for all of us that the decisions that we are making in our own respective cities and county, how they affect situations in other areas of our county. And people are getting moved around from place to place. And that's why I think this regional approach to this is going to be really important, having those conversations.
So,
Regional.
well, it's just a semantic thing.
Yeah.
Is there
Well,
anything else?
it's more than that. It was a good correction.
No, I think that this isn't that bad, as long as it has diverse.
That's very
provisions
positive.
Diverse provisions for everyone's community, because every community is so different
Right, so different.
than each other, that's the main thing.
This is a broad enough brush, and I think that what the key factors I'm living in here is the consistent outreach and engagement of our community members. And I think that's really going to be part of it, the transparency of what we do moving forward.
Yeah.
People fear what they don't know.
So is there a motion then for the floor?
There's one more.
One more. I asked
more
you,
slide.
you said no.
Oh,
Okay.
one more slide.
Yeah,
Well, you probably made me nervous.
I probably did, I'm sure I did.
So this is just sort of laying out what was on the other slide in a little bit more linear time sense way. We did not put timelines in there on purpose because part of it is really up to you and at your direction to us. But again, we're recommending adoption of the package. We are really needing your guidance on next steps for how you would like to develop an RFP tool. We can certainly help with convening a roundtable of the provider partners and help with bringing the specifics of the RFP and the details of that to the group, but would need your assistance designing. So you can have a subcommittee, Eric, sorry.
I was just gonna maybe make a recommendation or
Yeah.
maybe add a finer point to the RFP. It might make sense if the board is willing to, at least it would seem to be more efficient to have one RFP than having 3 or 4 different RFPs out there. Have one RFP, just to listen providers, have a roundtable, engage, see what's possible.
Yep.
And then we've kind of committed to maybe like a 2-step process for community engagement. So see what's possible, do some communication before you sign contracts with the provider. That's maybe where that opportunity to go into more direct contractual relationships might look like. I just really see a huge need to do efficient work of soliciting providers. It's up to the board, but I just maybe want to put that finer point. I think you could maybe do both, where you solicit in a joint way, but have individual contracts of your own.
I think that makes sense.
I like that because it gives us that, again, that transparency and working through the process, because I don't know in that initial RFP that we will have absolutely landed on that the site is viable. It's more of that thought process.
Yep.
That would be the best way, I think, to do it.
Yep. Again, my
I just
question.
wanted to ask, excuse me, Nick, did you have anything to comment? Okay, all right, just didn't want to not,
Yeah, thank you.
not recognize that you're here today. Thank you very much.
I guess I agree, Eric. I think that sounds like a good strategy moving forward. I guess I would ask the board, if we do want to do this roadshow or whatever we're calling it, where in this process do you think that would make the most sense after some of the projects were launched? Because we're not talking about the specific sites with this engagement piece, and we're talking about, homelessness as a whole. Just wanted to get
I would
thoughts
say
on
at the point that we release that RFP, or we're getting ready to release it, would be the best point to come out and start talking about our successes and what our next steps are. And this is a piece that's going out to help be the fabric of the next step. It won't be the definition, but we'll be reaching out to the community with our providers and trying to, pinpoint some areas where
Right, the RFP is actually an expansion on the successes that we've already made.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's great.
That's a tough point.
There you go.
Fabulous. Thank you.
These ones are bad.
The roadshow can be something really formal that you launch, and you can start today by what you're doing in this room, by offering hope, by inviting us to talk about what's been successful, and remembering to always talk about the people that are living unhoused as more than just one kind of person.
good idea to step out before point time count. About what we've done at point time.
For January 23rd.
It's scary.
What is our next meeting in January?
Well, we'll get to that later in the agenda.
No, but I mean, we're just talking about doing.
That's what I'm just saying, it could be either before or after, but it's gonna be interesting, because once those numbers start.
What was usually April or May when they.
Yeah, they have
You're
to.
required to defend by the end of April, so we typically, the HLC typically starts releasing some tentative numbers at the community's behest. In March, we can usually have pretty clean data by then.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to say with this last slide?
No, we're just ready to do work at your direction.
Thank you for this. Yeah. Thank you for all of this and all the work that this PPR has done.
Not PPE, thank goodness.
Or you could say,
We don't want that acronym anymore.
you could say PBR, and then we'd really know. Probably not everybody in the room knows.
Oh, I know. It was my favorite sandwiches in China.
No, no.
It's professional. Oh, that's PPJ. PPJ. Okay, I'm gonna stick with PPJ. I don't like PPR.
We may need a break, but I can make a motion to approve the PPR packet.
I second that.
Any further discussion, please? Seeing none in the room, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we're good with that. Okay, everyone needs to make one positive comment to our people right now, because Janice actually asked us to do that. Dan, what would you like to say? I know you want to have a point in success count.
Well, I just think that it's important that if we're gonna take and do community outreach to shoot our own horn, hate to say, because just like Jensen said, there's so many individual providers that do so much work, and the community knows so little about this, as a group, we stand a far better chance of the community agreeing that, look, you're accomplishing something than any one provider as their own. So we're gonna do a county-wide or regional, type of thing. I think we need to come together in that same outlook to the community.
And thank you for passing the pastor's name on to me. We had a great conversation. Appreciate it.
So just as a positive comment, I just actually appreciate all the effort that Janice's group did, that our staff did to get us to this point. I mean, I think even as a board, we have been asking, basically since July, that we wanted to have these counts and these things to show what our successes were and to move forward with positive information. So this is just a reaffirmation of what we stated in July and August of what our goals were as a group, just to bring us this great information out. Thank you, Molly, for joining us. So, and Eric, if you step in for Liza, we would love that. I really appreciate that we have an expanded, breadth of knowledge at the table to help us move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that I think it's absolutely remarkable if you think about where we were a few months ago, that we now have a set of, of values, of criteria. We have a framework. We have a list of sites. We have, a real possibility that these things are going to get done in our community and, really start turning the tide, like here in Deschutes County. And I think that this could really be a model for the state. And really, really excited. Thank you all for all the work.
I agree. I think having the extended board members is extremely helpful. And it's too bad we didn't kind of get down this road quicker somehow. But I think we had to go through the process we had to get where we are. Sometimes it's ugly. It can be ugly, but the point is to be able to get to the positive things. Like Patty said, let's blow the horn where necessary. And it's the media tends to be our best friend and our worst enemy on what they choose to report and how they choose to report it. And
Are you talking to Anna?
No, we need to make sure that we hold their feet to the fire when they bring up the negative reports and the pictures that they play over and over again on the news of horrendous sites, to make the same effort to go to the Veterans Village, to go to Salvation Army, to go to all the programs that are working and speak to the people who are working tirelessly and under the radar, and to search out those stories as well, not just the latest fire that's happened out at Juniper Ridge or something.
Thank you very much. Eric, thank you for your perfect numbers.
You're welcome.
And Molly, so thank you for being here, and thank you for your determination not to let this go, but to actually make a difference. And so appreciate having you and Janice, all your PBR groups work on this.
Well, and can I thank a couple of people?
Sure, go ahead.
Mickey has been incredible at keeping us organized and keeping materials together. Amy contributed a lot of really important technical assistance. I can't brag on Chris enough.
Okay.
So there are people working really hard on this, and service providers
We maybe should
who are bringing their heart and soul to this work.
Award.
Oh, but that would be the favorite child.
That
would be the favorite child award.
And last of all, you all who sit here and talk about this publicly, it's a tough subject. There's probably no way to get everybody happy with your work, and I'm really grateful.
Thank you so much for
Thanks for inviting me.
yes, that's okay.
And one thing I'd just like to offer in closing, like I think Central Oregon is very lucky to have such a deep bench of providers that are willing to rise to the challenge. And they do a really great job at what they do. But something that the providers in Central Oregon are not great at is bragging when they do something good. And so I think I'm making a commitment. I'm happy to help use the coordinated office to help highlight some local successes. So if you all have feedback or advice on a way we want to structure that, I would love to help contribute to that.
Probably very hard, concerning privacy concerns, taken.
Well, it's also like you say you did a good job and some member of the public comes out and says, well, I saw, this on the freeway yesterday morning, so why didn't you fix that?
You almost need a little testimonial thing.
Yeah. It's very challenging, but we're happy to help with the great work that folks are doing. So thank you.
Okay, so we're currently on time. We didn't actually talk about, we're going to talk about C now? No.
No, we're in that whole package.
We are exactly on time.
Yes, but we didn't talk about C with Janice.
Yeah, we did.
No, she started at F.
Well, real briefly, if you'd like. So
Yes.
C was a template that Amy Fraley's team at the city event helped put together. And it was a tool that was used for evaluating some of the site criteria for how some of the sites were prioritized in that list of properties.
Okay.
So it was just a template that we used.
That's part of the technical assistance package.
Yep,
right?
exactly. Yep, it's the first part of the package that was just approved.
All right. Go ahead.
Hello, we're gonna put my slide
Do
up.
you want to introduce yourself again? Because now you're right here in the group.
Oh, yes, Chair. Mickey Durden, Strategic Initiatives Manager from the City of Bend, and I'm wearing my Deschutes County Regional hats. I'm representing CHRO, assisting CHRO with CHRO work. I'm here to request for you, CHRO board to consider approving staff's proposal regarding advisory committee recruitment. In particular, there's 4 items that we'd like for you to review and consider approving. Number 1 is the recruitment process for the advisory committee, so we could have your technical advisors on board as soon as possible. And provision of stipend for all 15 members on the advisory board, which would be an investment of $8,000. And also training for all of us that
You
serve
need to pay the entire group,
a stipend. Yes, ma'am.
not each one.
Not each one, no.
Okay, I just wanted,
Yeah.
it's very, like, I'm going, wow, we're gonna go through a lot of money there.
Yes, and then training for all of us, staff, board members, advisory committee members, highly recommended by service providers, that we provide this training that's empathy-based, person-centered and trauma informed type of training. That would be an investment of $2,000. And then if you are aligned with all the proposals, it would be a recruitment starting as soon as tomorrow, the process as soon as tomorrow, so that we could actually have our first advisory committee meeting. The goal is February. If there's a delay, would absolutely let you know. Next, please. And then you see here are the 5 strategic priorities in our CHRO goals. Next. And the actions that we're taking here, if you approve this, would be fulfilling on a couple of actions in the strategic goals. One would be to activate the advisory body, and then the second would be address equity disparities with strategic investments, which reminds me, Eliza Wilson actually said that she would be my lifeline for any equitable compensation, and also the Ryan Dow, if I could ask you for your help if there's technical questions about that, if that's okay with you. And first I want to refresh everybody's memory and also get everybody on the same page of the makeup of the, next slide, please. The makeup of the advisory committee. This all is a culmination of all the input from service providers. Back in 2021, were members of the Emergency Homelessness Task Force. To fast forward to today, all the service providers providing input to the CHRO, and then back in spring of this year, we actually had a governance subcommittee of the board members with Chair Adair and Vice Chair Perkins, and then we have our CHRO executive team members. So we had City Manager Eric King and City Manager Keith Witkowski was part of providing us with guidance in finalizing this makeup, and this is actually also included in the CHRO board bylaws that was approved on October 26th. And you'll see that there's an overview of how many members, how the roles and responsibilities are detailed there. The advisory committee is a technical advisor to the board. The board is the decision-making authority. There's membership categories that you'll see there that's aligned with our strategic plan priorities. There's 5 strategic plan priorities. So we have coordinate our efforts and funding, enlist the community, expand services. My accent's coming out, sorry. Find space for the unsheltered and focus on affordable housing. The membership is where the board will appoint the members with guidance from the ex officio experts, members of the office, and then the entity holding the office. That would be COIC Executive Director Tammy Bainey. Terms of service is staggered, and there's no limit to the terms. And we could use this content for press release and also for any inquiries. There's a lot of information in here that we can help answer. So the next slide shows you, I'm going to go over the 3 process that we are proposing. 3 process because we're looking at an equitable process for people with lived experience who have a seat at the table, and also for folks, as we are all aware, there's a lot of capacity issues. Anecdotally, we have service providers that are working through the weekend, some until 10 p.m. So we're looking at the most easiest way for us to help them
participate, to remove barriers as much as possible to participation. So the first process is for at-large community members. This is all that all of us in local government are very familiar with this process. It's public notice, online, print, web. We do an application. We have them fill out an application, online, print, web. We do an interview with panels, scoring matrix, the whole thing. And then the appointment is usually at a public meeting at the end. Next, please. So what we're proposing is the second process, a distinct process, is for people with lived experience, and the recommendation and service providers think that this is critical. Might be extra steps for staff and service providers, but it is really critical that instead of doing the public notice, that we go through trusted service providers. They'll do like a show of interest, nomination process, instead of having people fill out an application, that it would be a referral from the service providers and a letter of recommendation. And then instead of like that panel interview, it would be a recommendation through the ex officio, if there's more than one candidate, to narrow it down to one candidate, and then the CHR board would approve that recommendation. If it's not approved, then we go back to the same process again, but the appointment is the same where it's public. And then last but not least is the specific expertise. And again, we want to also, next slide, please, make sure that we're being considerate. And I appreciate COIC executive directors helped also guide me in designing this proposal, is being considerate of the people that we're going to be inviting to the table to help us be part of the advisory committee. We want to make sure we want to kind of have that similar process as people with lived experience, where it's a recommendation process going through, where we empower the COIC executive director to vet and recommend candidates, and then the CHRO board approves it. And then we have the same appointment process where it's publicly announced at a CHRO board meeting. The proposed timeline, next slide, please, is that we really, we'll, if you give us the go ahead to take action as soon as tomorrow, the goal is that we have our first advisory committee meeting in February, so we can have that technical advisors sooner than later. And there's steps in between that, the application invitation deadline, the recommendation finalist list, the interviews, all happening in January. So it's going to be crammed.
So you want to do it starting tomorrow?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm not taking Christmas holiday vacations. I'm just kidding. So that's the timeline. And then circling back to the advisory committee recruitment, what we're requesting for you is to consider approving the recruitment process of 3 different processes that we shared with you. And the stipend, it would be, we interviewed a lot of different entities, and we did a lot of research online as well with HUD, Housing and Human Departments. I spoke with folks from City of Salem, from Multnomah County, the tribal government advisor. And I'm leveraging City of Bend is already providing a stipend of, next slide, please. Stipend of $40 for all our advisory bodies. So what we're recommending is we leverage all that information to help us fast track and not have to reinvent the wheel of doing the research. We leverage providing a stipend of $40 for each of the members per each meeting. That is really to remove the barriers to participation. And then one recommendation for an equitable compensation is $100 for the person with lived experience. And one of the things is that a lot of the members, if not all, are going to be part of an organization that will pay them for their attendance. And then if they do pre-work or post-work, they're doing it during their work hours where they're getting paid. And someone with lived experience might not have the same circumstance. So we want to really provide them with an equitable stipend. All in all 15 members, it would be $8,000 investment. And then the training is like all the service providers said that we really, since we're working on houselessness issues, since we're going to be interacting, or we have been interacting with people who in our community who are unhoused and people with lived experience, that we take empathy-based training, center person and trauma-informed training And that's for all of us. And I put up 51 to 100 users estimate. It could be lower than that, but it would be about $2,200 investment. And again, we could start recruiting as soon as tomorrow if you are all aligned with these proposals.
What do you mean 51 to 100 users?
So it's an online library. It's a basic training. And if we have, for example, for us, CHRO board is smaller than that, and then advisory committee, but then we might have people in our participating cities, like elected officials on the council that we want to participate. So it would be users, yeah, licensed.
Yeah, the training. So the HLC pays for this training called, they're offered by Ryan Dowd. It's like called the Homeless Training Institute or something like that. And so the HLC pays this license each year, and it's like, you know, you log on, you watch some videos, and I don't know, maybe there's a test, but
I'm sure there's a test.
and so this cost would be if adding some folks to the HLC's training license added a number of users, it would increase the cost, then the CHRO would pay for that.
I love the idea of broadening that to.
Yes, and I think it's important, and that's part of what we talked about too, is adding some training availability.
And we think that this would be a really good solution because it's not like we'll have to host a public meeting and train you guys. It's like asynchronous. You can log on before bed or like, oh, I'm here early for the meeting. I'm gonna watch a quick video. So I think it'll work well. And the providers in Central Oregon love these trainings and stand behind them. So they're gonna feel really great that you're interested as well.
Yeah, it's so uncanny. Every single person that I spoke to, local service providers, this was the first thing they.
It's like a code word. You're like running out,
Gold
you're like, okay,
standard
you're in.
across the country.
Wow.
There is written books, so that is the appropriate training. I do have to leave, so I just want to give some comments from the HLC perspective before I go. I'm happy to take this back to the board to communicate your intent on forming your advisory committee. And I don't know what they might say, but certainly if any of the HLC membership has those with lived experience that might be interested, we will refer them. I will say that although some of the seat positions might be different than much of the HLC membership, the intent of the advisory committee has a lot of duplication. So I would just think about that as you're forming your advisory committee and see where there's going to be a distinction between having an HLC member here, giving this kind of technical expertise, and then forming a separate committee that's going to do the same thing. So something to think about, but I'm very available if there are any questions. Chris has all my contact information.
Oh, I was just gonna say, can we share that with the group?
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Yes,
you so much.
thank you
And
for
I'm
having
excited to have a conversation with Eliza Wilson, Chair of HLC, and COIC Tammy Beatty with the makeup of this advisory committee and how, you know, is it going to overlap with HLC's advisory committee? And we came to the conclusion that it's not, it's a different makeup completely.
Fill in the gaps.
It's very
And
specific.
the really the hope of the you know, the office and the advisory committee is to streamline service provision so that we're all working together and to really help take away from their plates. That's the ultimate goal, so that they're not duplicating efforts, they're like not stretching their capacity thin. That's the ultimate goal.
Well, and the reality too is if we approve this today and go forward and we give it a good run for a year, we do find duplication, we can go do it again the next year. But I think that at this point, anything with forward momentum and getting more voices at the table with that experience to help us solve through this is not a bad idea.
So Mickey, we've got, out of the 15, we've got one person, one representative with lived experience that would go through that process. We've got 2 at-large people that would go through the sort of public process that we're all familiar with. And then the other 13 would be at some sort of invitation. Is that?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yeah.
Okay.
We're empowering COIC's executive director
Got it.
to vet and recommend to the board
That makes sense.
candidates.
And I appreciate Tammy's expertise.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, if I may, part of that is many of those agency folks or partners will let us know who has the most capacity, information, and ability to serve. And so part of it isn't a community-wide solution, it's really the agency letting us know who's available.
Great.
And many of those individuals wouldn't need a stipend because they are being paid to be there as well, and so that will reduce
So that they actually won't take a stipend. Probably some of them.
For public, employees and such, that typically isn't, it typically isn't a stipend paid. But I suspect it would be on each jurisdiction as to, or agency, what their internal policy would be.
No, I was thinking, what, do you have to pay them cash?
There's some different options that we can get cards, yeah,
at the city of Bend.
yeah.
Okay,
And there's, you know, in our experience at the city of Bend, there are some people who will waive it and say, no, thank you. And so the number I gave you was a conservative number that thinking, oh, let's say everybody says, okay, I'll take it. I'm just giving you a conservative number, but it might be lower than that.
I backed into it, so that sounds good. Is there a motion? Is there any more discussion? Dan, did you have it? Okay,
Move to approve the recommendations for the advisory committee recruitment.
I'll second.
okay, thank you, Megan. Any further discussion?
Do we need to clarify on the stipend if we think that some of it is not going to be accessible or used, or just leave it as?
I think you want to leave it at the maximum that we might need, and then if we have funds remaining, then it's a carry forward, right?
Yeah, correct. That's good.
Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, meeting cadence for next year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, you're good.
Oh.
I don't have any slides to share, just a quick conversation for some, as we're last meeting of 2023, headed into 2024. So we don't have any CHRO meetings on the agenda currently. Happy to get calendar invites sent out this afternoon if we want to stick with the same third Thursday of the month from 11 to 12:30. Perfect. Something that we've kind of staff has been talking about internally. Do you have any preference on where these meetings continue to be hosted with the transition? Like, do we like the Allen Room? Are we interested in continuing to host meetings here? Is there an interest in having them at a COIC location? Currently the public notice website, like we noticed for these on the Deschutes County webpage, but we could do it on the COIC website. We've talked about it. There's pros and cons to each, but I don't think it'll make a big difference. Just wanted to get your guidance. Oh,
Or maybe you want your own, so that it's
even better.
focused and what elevates
Yeah.
your work.
Like each entity would public notice, or we would host a meeting at their.
No, in terms of the website.
So the website.
Oh, gotcha, like a whole standalone website. Yeah, we could do that. It
How much
lives
would that
under the
cost?
county page. That's a great question.
Yeah, I can
I'm not
imagine. It would.
Probably wouldn't be that bad. Probably some startup costs, but once it's like live and running.
We have one under the former.
But it was under the calendar.
Yeah, we have it. There is a current coordinated office page. It just lives under the county
Yeah.
Right.
website.
We could expand.
Not a whole lot of preference.
Just to keep in mind, if you do a standalone website, that's certainly a possibility, but then you're paying a hosting fee.
Thank you, Eric.
Thinking of the public that might be searching for it, would they think to go to the county website?
And I will say though, the county has a lot of really nice features, and maybe other cities do, but like the ability to host through YouTube and have that all automatically, like it's kind of nice. So I think to your point about folks being used to viewing things the way they are, I don't know if we need to change it. I don't know. I don't have a recommendation. I just want to get your feedback.
Sounds like we're okay.
Or maybe just make it easier to find. I know it's really hard to find.
Yeah.
information
I would
on.
like it to be easier to find the information online, and as far as posting, I would almost want to table that to the new year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. I think I'm open to moving it if it would give us better spacing. This seems a little bit
Okay.
tight.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, we will reapproach in the new year, but more information, easier to find in the meantime. That's great. Okay, and then the next agenda item is just kind of priming for the next meeting about the election of officers. So there were some bylaws at the end of the table. I think folks have them on page 5 at the top of the bylaws, right under vice chair. The bylaws state that the chair and vice chair will be elected by the board to serve in that capacity upon approval of the bylaws until the last meeting of the calendar year. At the first meeting of each subsequent calendar year, the chair and vice chair will be elected by the board to serve in those capacities. So this is just all to say, over the holidays, be thinking about how things have been going. There's nothing that says that we can't keep current folks in their same positions, but there will be a vote in the next meeting. So just wanted to make
And when
everyone
is
aware
that
of that.
date?
As of right now, it'll be the third Thursday of January, which is the 5th. Oh no, which is the 18th.
Okay, January 18th.
And I will send out a calendar invite before the end of the week.
Great. So do we have, we're running a tiny bit behind schedule. Community updates from our board members?
We have not, when you all talk about service providers, in Sisters, we have more organized volunteers, and they have been doing a tremendous amount of outreach to our folks in the forest, where most of our houseless people are. And we get periodic updates from them about people that they've helped and wonderful stories, which nobody hears about as usual, but at least on the city council, we do get a little information from them. We have an independent crowd out there that are in many cases dealing with their situation the way they choose to deal with it, but there are alternatives for them. And I don't think that many of them ever reach any of the organized systems as far as being in counts. I don't know that any, maybe you have some people that have come into the system from Sisters, but I don't think too many of them reach into the count systems. But probably that count that's taken in January, they will be counted. So there are some good things going on, and we appreciate the help that we do get from our volunteers. So I feel good about that.
Thank you for sharing that. I know there are volunteers that were religiously helping, and yes, so I see it. And the woman I tried to help from Sisters was homeless. I met her at church, and then I didn't see her, and
you worried.
Yeah, and then she hadn't been back to church, and I've been calling her, and so maybe she's gone back to her family in Lincoln City. I can only pray that that's what happened. I've been talking to the law enforcement people that knew her, and I said, please tell her to call me. She needed some specific help. Maybe.
I guess I would just highlight that Family Kitchen, which does so much incredible work for our community, is losing their location. I know that Donna Brickle has been in contact with the city and is trying to make some connections to see where they can be next. But just want to keep that on everyone's radar, because I think it is an absolutely essential resource that we have in our community. And I hope that we can find a bigger and better location for them where they can provide more services, which I know is something that they would like to do.
Thank you. So everyone heard that Family Kitchen, they still have not found a location. I think what is almost a month now, haven't they, since they announced that?
Yeah.
Kat?
Good news, Oasis Village, we are plowing right along, so we should be able to get people in by January 4th is what we're thinking. Yeah, we just had the homes from Redmond High School and Heart of Orient are all up and getting hardwired in and drywall this week, and community buildings plugging right along. I think we're just waiting for a few other buildings to be delivered, so that's very exciting. Eleanor was in to council the other day talking about it, and that was nice. But I feel like it's a really good start, and we're still looking at stuff to do with the 9 acres behind it, whether it's managed RV camp or moving forward 45 from there. Shepherd's House opened in November and had their opening, and I believe Bethlehem Inn on the 21st will be hosting. What is it called?
It's the longest night.
Longest night. So that they'll probably give us a complete update on where they're headed with that project. And they'll be 8 a.m. on the 21st in Redmond.
And I do want to mention the county actually designated that property about 2 years ago. And look how long it has taken. So anyway, yeah, we were trying to help a long time ago. So I'm really proud of you guys for pulling it together and keeping it open. It's great. Dan.
As far as Lapine's been relatively static here for a while. It hasn't gotten any worse. It hasn't gotten any better. We've been searching for a safe park location that I've been communicating with Patty about. And inquiring to different, churches and stuff, but, that's kind of it. Our shelter, that we have on cold nights, the warming shelter, it's been open a few nights here lately.
What temperature does that open at? Do you know, Dan?
Yeah, but I'm not sure these hours is what I'm saying. I don't know when it opened.
5 p.m. to 7 a.m. are the scheduled hours. They were supposed to open for night by night shelter on December 1st. I can certainly gather more information.
Well, I just Molly, what temperature though? So people
It's not temperature.
it's not, okay, great. So that's every night then in La Pine?
Yeah, I just wasn't sure when they started this regular, hourly thing, and I wasn't aware of when hours they were open.
Okay,
My
okay,
Yeah.
and for
5
No
p.m.
worries.
to 7
I'm just
a.m.
glad for the information.
And I did talk to Stacy Woody yesterday. I did hear back from her after I talked to the pastor. And that's a bit out of her area, but you know what? Maybe we, in this plea, will be able to find someone in the community of La Pine that could help with the safe parking program. Maybe there's someone out there that if you find another location or two, we're probably going to need somebody.
That's closer in.
Right, because Stacy's program is in Bend. And she said, I really don't run. She goes, she's going to check into it and talk to, and see what she can do. But if it gets any bigger, then she might have to, we might need somebody else to help with that. Because Rick runs the program in Redmond and then Stacy's in Bend. But if we can get something going, I think it's
Well,
really
that's what
great.
I was saying. We don't currently have one
Yeah,
in La Pine, but that's where I had relayed to you a location.
right. I know it would be a great location. That's good. All right. And okay, so we now have a couple of minutes for public comments.
Do you have any updates?
I've been talking this whole time. Just anyone else want to hear from me? Anyway, no, just thank you so much. It's definitely been a challenging time, and I know we do a lot of really good things, and I really appreciate them because I personally really feel so badly when I hear about kids that are out there that are homeless with their parents. That's why I'm really hoping that rehousing is going to fit and get those families into even a warm studio apartment where they can actually turn on the heat. That's even smaller is better than being so cold.
Commissioner, you might just share, and I think it was reported in the media that the county did adopt safe parking programs inside or to Bend the Redmond River Grove boundaries and beyond. So
Yes,
that
we
is an
did.
action
Up
that
to
the
a
board
mile
is supposed to be
inside the UGB. Yes. Oh, yes. Of course we did, because it's, there's opportunities there for the county to participate too. Blake? Is there anyone in the room that wants, are there anyone in the room who's going to make a comment? Chuck, do you want to come to the table and introduce yourself, please, to the audience? Thank you so much. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Yes. Hello, CSR board members. My name is Chuck Hemingway. I'm a local advocate for the unhoused community in our region. I'm here in that capacity, but I'd like to maybe give a brief update too about Central Oregon Villages. Central Oregon Villages is coming online by the end of this month. All 20 units will be ready and probably more likely than not be occupied. I might note that in March, we opened the first 6 units, and the first 6 occupants were homeless women who were living in their vehicles or in tents, all of whom had chronic medical conditions, and most of whom had experienced sexual violence, if not in the camps, elsewhere in their life. That community is growing, and we're very excited about having it online with, and Nikki Barrett, the executive director, has done an incredible job. But I'm not here in that capacity. I'm actually here as an individual, to ask you as individuals and as members of this entity and as members of your various local communities to think outside the box and to be open to innovative solutions to address serving the needs of the unhoused in Central Oregon. The governor's made clear that in our Central Oregon localities, we've got to look at sites inside the UGB before any sites outside the UBGs can be considered. I've been actively involved with the Gales family, who have offered up a site east of town outside the UGB, but within a mile of the city limits of Bend. There are complications with making that site work, and the county commission's recent passage of the safe parking ordinance is going to be a great first step toward a potential way to deal with those complications. But the Gales property is just one site. By itself, it's not the answer, and we can't just focus on that. While the Gales property is needed, so are other properties. Serving the needs of our various communities not only looks different for each community, it also looks different for the persons and the individuals within those communities. We have to have options. We need to build a new level of support that honors and values this reality. I know that as a board here, you've got to focus on Deschutes County, but at the same time, Deschutes County should be a part of a regional approach. This will help dissipate the impact on Deschutes County. Don't ignore the region. Include the region as a part of your vision. I might kind of just thinking outside the box, say, hey, up in Jefferson County, there might be some land available, like around Deer Ridge. That could be a part of the solution for Deschutes County. We just need to have a range of options to help stabilize and provide a safe environment for those struggling. It's easy to get discouraged when you're in this line of work that you guys are doing, and I believe, as I hope you do, that we're really close to achieving some significant short-term successes. There's an old saying that when you're looking out at the big forest, you've got to clear just saw the wood in front of you. You'll get there. With innovative, short-term, small successes, I know we can get there. And so I thank you so much for the work you're doing to make those small successes possible.
Thank you for those wise words. Small successes. Is there anybody online? Yes.
I have Jenny Wingard.
Okay, Jenny. Good afternoon. Do you want to go ahead?
Hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I have some odd internet issues, so I apologize if I blip in and blip out. I wasn't able to see most of the meeting. Regarding the template, the shelter technical committee site evaluation, I have a couple concerns or perhaps suggestions. I don't see any criteria to the effect of equity, such as, is the potential site that is getting evaluated, is it equitable to the neighborhood in comparison to other neighborhoods or areas in the city or jurisdiction? Is the potential site close to public land that is already experiencing homeless related issues such as crime, nuisances, and or fire danger? Are there other homeless shelters nearby or a concentration of existing homeless shelters? Here's an actual example of inequity. Bend's Larkspur District, Eastside Bend, has 4 known or cited homeless facilities. Existing facilities is a 27th outdoor shelter, high barrier. I do appreciate that facility. The second is St. Vincent's Place, a tiny home village where a resident there who was to be monitored and adhere to a curfew performed a spree of late night thefts in or near the area of this facility in my neighborhood. There are 2 future facilities, Cleveland Commons Permanent Supportive Housing for the chronically homeless in Larkspur, and come next month, January, a transitional house for recently released felons, including sex felons, that is 1 block away or just feet away from a park tailored for elementary aged children. I don't know of other areas in Bend with this much concentration with this facility type. I don't see the equity or balance in this, and I'm sure if the point that I'm highlighting, if looked at objectively, one can easily understand or see that it's currently imbalanced or inequitable in Bend. Another concern or suggestion, and I missed some of the meetings, so I may have missed this. Charter Board, please focus on question number 4, and I quote, is the site adjacent or within 150 feet of a school, daycare, or other child care facilities? What is the purpose or outcome of this criteria point? Is it to determine what shelter type model type. Is it to understand if a shelter is to be placed 150 feet or within 150 feet of children facilities? And then something to highlight, if it is something about a buffer or decide in the shelter model, why not at least 1,000 feet, just like safe parking or shelters? And that's all I have today.
Thank you so much. And I do see question number 4, and it is within 150 feet, as you stated, of a school, daycare, or other childcare facility. I remember when we were working on marijuana, we used a lot. We used a greater distance than 150 feet. So this is something that is used. I believe, isn't that what we were told, Chris?
It was. So the Public Partners Roundtable has approved this and contributed to it, but yes, there were certain members of the city events team that helped contribute to this as well.
Okay,
but
so
this is something that was not just suggested by the city of Bend, it was suggested by the whole Public Partners Roundtable and approved by all entities.
so would it be possible just to have the number of feet listed on, like they say, it is, outside, or let's say it is, they check it out, it is within, but could we have the actual distance that it is? Let's say it's 2,000 feet.
So,
Something more
let me throw
clarified.
out just something random here, because I think we're putting the cart before the horse, and Janice is not in the room. So let's do this and table it for January, because I think what we also need to look at is what type of shelters, because again, we're putting out an RFP and we're looking at who's gonna put what where. And we're not gonna not have public process, and we're not just gonna do something. And what if this is a shelter for women with children and they need the walkability to school? What if that's one of the things they're considering? What if it's like, oh, no, we don't want to put this here because that's too close? So I think I would like to get their input to their process for that question before I make it up on my end.
Definitely, I believe we need to discuss it in January. That would be great.
Make sure it's on the agenda for January.
Thank you. January's agenda, please. All right, so there being no other raised hands, let's adjourn the meeting. Our next meeting will be then January 18th. Is that right?
Yes, January.
Great. Thank you so much.